ho. This is Captain Dirty here, and we're coming back with another Captain Dirty Reacts. Today we'll be looking at Inside Star Citizen Persistence Existence.
Hey all, Space Dad here, coming to you from a secret facility that we'll be talking more about next quarter. Now, Alpha 3.18 has a whole lot of features that players have been anxious for updates on. And while we'll get to all of them like we always do before this quarter is out, we wanted to take this week's show and slow things down a bit for an uninterrupted, unabridged chat about persistent entity streaming. What it is, how it's been going, where it's at now, and what's coming up next. And we'll get back to our normal features next week. But for now, please join me in welcoming Benoit Beauséjour, CTO of our partners at Turbulent, for what we're calling our very first PES report.
Okay, this hopefully will be good. Persistence is one of the big things that I think is currently limiting pirate gameplay within Star Citizen. We've had a lot of issues with people alt-F4ing, bedlogging, this sort of thing. So hopefully we'll have some good news here soon. Didn't always used to be that way up until, I don't know, 3.16 or so, 3.17. Those sorts of issues really weren't a thing. Persistence was functioning fairly well up until maybe about 4 or 5 months ago. Let's see what they have to say.
So, Benoit, welcome back to ISC. To start things off, give us a nickel version of what persistent entity streaming is.
Persistent entity streaming is a system that allows us to persist the entire game world and restore it from disk so that it's never lost and changes from players are meaningful.
And what's that look like to the player? How will players know if PES is working or not?
They're gonna know because every time they come back to the same server, the state will be the same. So if you leave a ship, a can, or any kind of items in the world, it'll stay there. You blow up a door, it'll be blown on that server forever.
But part of this is something that cleans up the junk afterwards, right?
Yeah, some items will be covered under lifecycle management, which they'll get recycled, right? Because obviously we need some kind of janitorial system behind the scenes.
Yeah, so this is super important for pirates. If you, find somebody out there on the surface of a moon or in deep space or whatever, and you go ahead and you disable their ship, if, like I said, if they alt F4, if they exit the server currently, their ship's just going to disappear, right? So that basically makes piracy very difficult currently under the normal circumstances. So if they've got this fixed, that means, we can take all the time in the world to deal with, people trying to PvP while we are trying to loot a ship. We can go fly off, deal with them, come back, get the goods, get out of there. This is going to be huge.
But there also are discussions about gameplay to do that, to help players, to get players to help us clean up the game world. But yes, that's a new avenue that persistent entity streaming opens up.
All right, so we brought everyone up to speed on what PES is. Let's get to the updates. Now, last time we heard anything was from Chris's letter from the chairman back in May, where we'd just dropped something on the ground, shut the servers down, brought the servers back up, and it was still there. What's happened in the last 3 months?
So the team, which is a fairly large team at this point, has been working really hard to get our first stage delivery to what we call game dev, which is our main branch. What that means is we've moved from a prototypical work branch into what everybody in the company is using to develop the game. And so that's the big achievement, is now the technology is in the game dev branch. So everybody is using it in day-to-day, day in, day out testing. So all the bugs appear, they're right in our faces. We fix them right away. It's been a bit of a crazy time, but that's the big achievement in the last three months, is that we've stabilized the technology enough so that the entire company can now be working on it.
Yeah, so that's what I was talking about before, right? About 3, 4 months ago. Before that point, persistence was working fairly well, right? It might take, maybe you would have 30 minutes to an hour, uh, with a ship that's got no players active in it, right? And that player has gone and claimed their ship or left the server or whatever the case may be. That ship used to still be there. And when that broke, my suspicion was that they were getting close to completing their next version of persistence. Um, so it sounds like we're getting there.
Uh, define crazy.
The find crazy, everything being on fire, like you know, this technology touches on every subsystem in the game. So transit was busted, stuff was persisting in the wrong locations. You couldn't log into the game because obviously with PES comes a new login flow to get players into the game because we need to bring your items into a new database. So that entire system was also rocky to get in because there's a lot of cases to deal with, like timeouts if you have too many items. What happens if you have too many items? And dealing with all the different stages of the login from authentication to you being actually spawning in the game. And so it's been a lot of debugging, encountering issues on different types of machines because when we start, all the developers have some pretty good machines on those feature branches, but when we move to game dev, now we're exposed to all kinds of different hardware, and timing issues occur. Those are the weird ones to find. They're really difficult to trace, in fact. But so that's been the craziness is getting exposed to way more machine types or users as well, right? Like the game requires a lot of resources to run when we develop locally, and so sometimes one service doesn't start on somebody's machine, and that causes all these crashes to start being reported, and now we have to investigate them. And so that's been a bit of it's the real time effect that makes it crazy. It's like, it's not, we're not making technology in a bubble anymore where everybody's using it. And so that makes it really, really difficult to follow. But it's been fun finally get the technology in the hands of people that can really adjust it for the game and for the players. And so that's been fantastic.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad that they've been doing some bug testing and bug fixing. That all sounds like pretty standard game development stuff, though. So maybe we can hear about something a little bit more exciting here. Let's find out.
So that's been the last couple months, but where are we at right now?
So right now on the technology side, we're in bug fixing mode, right? And identifying the elements that are left that are still, rough around the edges. So I don't want to call it polish. It's really bug fixing, bug testing, stabilization. Stabilization is the right word. That's what we're doing right now. So it's feature parity and making sure everything works the way it should. On the other side, there's a new team that's kicking in work, which is deployment teams, right? So this is taking the technology that we have working on a game dev build and locally and basically breaking it up into a lot of small services that run in the cloud. So the operationalization of the technology, that's what we're really focusing on now. It's like a dependent project, right? So this allows us to basically bring the game to you guys. That's where we can do PTU. So PTU is for a lot larger than a developer running the game on his machine. Even though there's tons of services when we go to the cloud, we've got operators that deploy that on multiple machines and scale this out. This is made to scale. So now it's about testing that that's true. So we've got the technology is working. Now we're trying to scale it out to the cloud, see, how many users we're taking in there, the weight of the entities, how many entities we end up having in the databases, can they reload fast enough? Testing all of the facets of the assumptions that we had, but really getting this technology ready to be deployed for players to play on.
They're a little shy so far of telling us when this is coming to the live build. But my suspicion is that this is going to have to show up before or at the same time as their new cargo refactor. It just doesn't make sense to have the cargo refactor all the physicalized cargo on your ship, right? Having to move it on and off of the cargo decks on your ships. This obviously brings much needed gameplay to the piracy career path, but it doesn't really matter if that ship just disappears, right? So this persistence has got to come before or alongside the physicalized cargo updates. Otherwise, you may not even notice. So it sounds like they're testing it, and hopefully we will have this for 318. I'm going to say it if they're not going to say it.
Has the recent change in server player counts had any effect on PES testing or its development?
Well, at first we thought it was going to have an effect, but the reality is the same amount of entities get stored, whether 100 players are simulated or 50. So no, for the moment there is no side effect to having more player caps, because obviously there's more entities being changed, but ultimately for the same amount of players online, whether they're divided on 50, 100 players per server doesn't change anything for PS.
Great, awesome. But what's next? Where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? It's a straight line to deployment, right? That's the only thing that matters right now is to make sure that the technology can run in the cloud properly, that it scales out, that if we have more players coming in, either in a short period of time or in a long period of time, that we can, add more provisioning, add more machines to run it, making sure it operates well at scale. So when, all of you guys are online, to make sure that everything's functioning properly, that we recover from errors. This tech comes with a lot more observability than the previous systems that we had. So we have tons of graphs and like data that's coming in from the system operating. And the teams need to get used to this to be able to identify problems, to be able to help support. We have a bunch of new tools that we're also working in the last stretch here to allow game support to help players that have issues. Character repair is something that we're starting to work on. Mind the word here is not character reset, but character repair, which is something that we can now do that we could not do before. So that will allow us to not just destroy people's inventories and items, but really go and fix one issue on so that they can keep playing. So
It'll be nice. A perfect world, character resets, character repairs wouldn't even be in the vocabulary, wouldn't exist. But we're in an alpha state right now. Obviously, right? We all know that. So yeah, the repair thing I think is nice. You won't lose all of the progress that you've made potentially if you need to do a reset or to fix some kind of issue with your character. So yeah, that's cool.
we're trying to get that in before we launch it, because we think that would be very beneficial for if there are corruption events again. We're trying to the technology is made to not have those, but like better safe than sorry. But so that's really the work now, is login flow and PES is just stabilization and deployment so that we can launch it. So it's beeline for 318.
There it is. That's what I was waiting for. Yes, stabilize it, fix the bugs, and deploy it. Get it out to the players because we really have to have this for the physicalized cargo to matter.
Is all. It's like we're banging on it until it gets in properly.
Now, I know we don't like to do dates, but we got a whole lot of player testers waiting to help bang on the pipes. You wanna forecast anything?
Oh no, I'm not even gonna try to gamble on that one. I mean, we have it running in the cloud. It's running, right? But before we're comfortable not sending the ETF team into a just fire drill, that's gonna be there's a big difference between testers, internal testers, developers using the system, and when we get real users on it, it's completely different, right? And so it's hard to say for me. Like I don't want to forecast it.
That's fair. That's fair.
Probably the smart move.
Now, before we let you go, I want to reiterate that PES isn't a traditional feature like players are used to. When it works, Star Citizen isn't going to look any different. It'll just be another step closer to functioning like we've always intended to. It's a major step forward in stability when all is said and done.
This might not be hugely noticeable to players outside of the piracy game loop, but for those of us pirates, we are going to notice this on the very first day.
Yeah, I'm not saying we're not going to have wipes anymore because there's always data changes that will require us to do that. But we're really hoping that the technology will allow us to have consistent data, which we don't always have right now. Every player's had horror stories of how they're losing their movie glass or their eyes. Which is incidentally one thing I discovered in this project is that if you don't have eyes, you don't see markers in your visor. That's an interesting one. So trying to make sure that the data
It's kind of weird.
the technology will make sure that the data is safe and sound. So obviously less corruption. So that's the first thing we expect. Second one, stuff will persist. And to be honest, at this time, we don't totally know what that's going to mean when we put real players in it. Right. So
Right.
we do have life cycle systems and cleanups and all that stuff. Yes, we've planned for that. But we don't yet know what you guys will do with it. And that will greatly affect how the technology functions, right, in the end.
So, something just came to mind here. Let's say that persistence exists indefinitely, right? And you, in the course of one of your, everyday gameplay sessions, crash a ship on the surface of a moon. Well, let's say it's not completely destroyed. Let's just say that, like, the engines have been destroyed on it or are damaged, right? This means that potentially, right, when salvage and repair and all of this stuff becomes a reality, players might serve as sort of an in-game janitor system, right, where you find a spaceship that is partially destroyed, just sitting there collecting dust on the surface of a moon. You as a player might decide, well, I can afford the repairs on this ship and probably try to profit on it. So then this can create a gameplay loop for those players to go get the parts, bring them back to the moon, get the ship repaired, fly the ship off, sell it, right? That would be awesome. Can't wait for this sort of thing to be a reality in this game.
So that's going to be interesting to see. So as a player, stuff you put on one server will stay there, right? It's there until that server gets wiped manually. But by default, every server will just persist. Like you said, it's a stepping stone technology. Really, what this means is behind the scenes, the simulation and the replication of the game. So simulation is the stuff that runs the physics and the rendering and the AI, right? Is one thing, and the replication, which is sending updates and the state of all these entities as they're being simulated. This used to be like this, right? And now with PES and the game server, this is split into two. And that's the big achievement that PES allows us to do. Yes, we get persistent state. That's awesome. That's great. But the real thing is that we separate simulation from replication, and that allows us to do server meshing after that. And that's the reason why we're doing this.
All right, last question then.
Server meshing. The big pie in the sky. Hopefully we get there.
How do you feel?
Good. I feel good. Tired, but we're in the home stretch, so I'm happy. I'm happy about where we are. I'm happy that the company now can use the technology and see what it's like to persist everything. I mean, our dev servers are now littered with stuff flying around, which is cool. But I know I feel good. I feel encouraged. Also stressed out because we need to scale it, right? So it's that 10% that takes 90% of the time, right?
Yeah, so I am curious about the if we're going to have all of these ships and items and bodies persisting indefinitely in the verse, at a certain point, that's going to really start to tax on the servers and on people's machines. this is one of the reasons why a lot of the games like Ark or Rust um, tend to have a life cycle for their servers, maybe of a month or 2 months, right? Because you can only put so much stuff on the map before it starts to bog down everybody's gameplay. Um, so, I think it will be interesting if they can get encourage players to clean up the environment, right? Maybe you could be a janitor at the space station to pay off some parking fines or something like that, or make a little bit of money. You go around, pick up the trash, put the trash in the bin. You get paid for that, right? Or on a much kind of higher level of gameplay, we could maybe be repairing ships and getting them off of the surfaces of moons and stuff like that. But space is a big place, right? So I've been thinking of like physical locations, moons, space stations, but what about all this garbage that is just stuck out in space, where players maybe aren't so likely to just run into it and think like, oh, I should clean this up, right? The game needs to have some kind of way, I think, of dealing with that. Otherwise, it's going to create problems, I think, down the road. So it'll be interesting to see what approach they take with that. If it's not player crews going out and cleaning these things up, maybe we'll see NPC crews going and doing these sort of janitor services within the game world.
So that's the effect I'm a bit stressed out for, but it's okay. I feel good about it.
All right, Benoit, thank you for your time, man.
Thank you, man.
So, what did we learn this week? Well, hopefully, it's that persistent entity streaming may not be the most visual of features, but it is the next big step in realizing a universe where players can truly leave their mark. The last major milestone that'll make server meshing possible, and that it's still heading your way in the upcoming Alpha 3.18. Now, thank you for taking this ISC detour with us this week, but don't worry, we've still got 4 more episodes left this quarter where we'll be covering things like hull stripping, cargo refactor, the new 600i and MSR crash sites, and more, as well as meeting the performance capture team and exploring their new facility next door. And then maybe we'll stop by. His people are talking to my people. We'll see what we can make happen. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you all next week.
Okay. Yeah, pretty good news. This is an exciting update for all of us pirate players. It's a stepping stone, definitely, but it's an important one, and it's one that the lack of persistence has really caused the piracy gameplay loop to suffer recently. I took a look at one of Mongrel Squad's recent videos, and I noticed that they have changed their tactics quite a bit in order to counter the prevalence of players alt-F4ing, backlogging, exiting to menus. I've noticed that they're opting to move in much more quickly, and as soon as they see the pilot seat going empty, they just blow the ship up. Which is, sure, yeah, that's one way to do it for sure. I don't think that that's going to prevent people from alt F4ing or that sort of thing, but it might help if people are trying to bedlog. That probably would at least ensure that their ship is destroyed and cargo has been lost when they return. So, good on them for addressing the current state of the game with a change in tactics. I think we've all kind of had to do that to one degree or another. But yeah, once this persistence comes back, things will kind of go back to normal for us pirates. We'll be able to take a little bit more time with our targets too, talking to them before we start to get suspicious that they're going to do some cheesy bullshit and we just decide to kill them. Right? I'm sure a couple people out there who may have wanted to interact and negotiate with pirates made the mistake of getting out of their seat and signaling to the pirates that they possibly are going to bedlog, thus ensuring their early demise. Right? So this is going to help everybody. and I can't wait to see it happen. 318 cannot get here soon enough. Hopefully, we'll see it a little bit. Not too long. I'm hoping maybe a couple months or so. But we will see. All right, thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back with another Captain Dirty Reacts before too long.